When you're doing the show yourself, making the content, it's a little difficult to juggle those other aspects that you can pretty easily outsource to somebody who knows what they're doing.
I wish that more people would accept that things aren't going to be very good when they start. That's totally valid that you want it to be the best you can, but it's not going to be that great.
You hear the joke all the time of the three college dudes who are like, we're so funny, we should start a podcast, and think they can survive on their conversation alone. That is true for a frighteningly small percentage of people.
This is a big deal to do a thing, then finish the thing and ask for more. It seems really simple, but nobody does this.
To me, an interesting person is somebody who has a drive to better themselves in some aspect. Because if you're not working to be the best version of yourself that you can be, what are you doing?
Hey, welcome to The Create Unknown. This is Matt. I'm Kevinless tonight. Kevin is back in the prison that is in California. He's got a YouTube event out there, and I suppose that's a legitimate reason to have to skip. But tonight is an episode of Productivity and Possibilities. We've got an oddly special but not special guest tonight. You'll understand what I mean in a minute. But first, I want to say that this is the first time recording from the new studio. I'm on the Main Gear Vibe, and let me tell you how this played out. We talked to Main Gear, and the first thing they do is say, "Well, what do you need?" And I wanted to flip it around on them and say, I need an absolute beast. You tell me what really the best thing you can put together is. It's got to be able to handle some of the most serious computing ever. And they put together a Vibe machine, which is absolutely fantastic. I've sent some of the pictures to people in the Discord and to people in Twitter DMs. It's aesthetically quite pleasing. The specs are good. The specs that they gave me, I got an RTX 3070, which is kind of sweet. A really big solid state drive, which I needed, 64 gigabytes of memory. And at the end, he's like, what are you going to use this for? I need to play 2 games. I need to play Zork and I need to play Google Docs. Hopefully this machine can handle those 2 things. It's really been amazing. The setup was lightning fast. It looks awesome. A little bit of an odd aesthetic, combining about 1900 aesthetics with some Zoomer here, with the lights and all of that. It's really cool, though. I like the juxtaposition of that. So, like I said, Kevin will be back next week when we've got Bobby Duke. But tonight we have somebody who's been hanging around a long time in terms of the Create Unknown's lifespan. We've known Ben. This is Producer Ben for nearly a decade, really. And we think that's over 85% of his life. When he was just a fetus, he volunteered to get a few things set up for this, for us, including the Discord that you're quite likely in right now. We've been in the industry for about 15 years at a fairly high level, and we decided to entrust much of this podcast with a high schooler at the time. And it was absolutely the right decision. We had a couple people question us, just be like, do you really want to put such a big project in the hands of somebody who's relatively young and has less experience than, think of the people in our network who we could ask for help. We didn't think that was the right move. We thought Ben has serious talent. We want to develop that talent. We want him to grow with the show. And we rolled the dice on that, and it does seem to have paid off. But he's also in the middle of studying at one of the best communication schools in the country. I actually did some programs there a long, long time ago. We'll probably get into that later. But if he plays his cards right, he may eclipse Bob Costas as that program's most notable alumnus. But that's really why we wanted to do an episode talking to Ben for that full episode, because he's a Zoomer. He's got a few years in the game with us in that hands-on way, just getting started the way so many of our guests have have said they've done it. But he's also right in the middle of doing the absolutely traditional route in terms of studying communications and thinking about a career in it. So that combination is really pretty unique. We talked to a lot of people who have made it. Ben's somebody who's in the middle of making it and doing it in two different ways. So Ben, the ultimate indignity here is that you're going to have to edit your own episode. Did you think this day would come?
You know what? It doesn't feel great, but it doesn't feel terrible, Not excited to have to listen to myself for about an hour of podcast, but I am excited to get that bag. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
That's true. You would be the first properly paid guest. We did have one scenario that was very, very murky because it wasn't payment. It was
right.
It was a donation of sorts. So this would be, yeah. Is that a fair way to put it?
I think, a donation to a certain foundation would be one way to put it. It's like how big companies like donate to super PACs for like presidential candidates. It was a lot like that. So technically we didn't give money to Joe Biden. We just gave like $1 trillion to his super PAC.
Right. Well, the implication here that thinking about what that donation funded, we probably shouldn't pull on that thread.
No.
But yeah, the intro, that it's a unique position, okay, that you're in, where you are in the middle of doing it these two ways. And we have talked to a couple people who have been in that spot. Ted was really, really, really forthcoming about the pluses and minuses of kind of just getting his hands in to making videos and being funny and walking around campus with gallons of milk. And then also having actual classes and like an alumni network that you can actually use. But generally we talk to people who started a YouTube channel when they were 12 and then were grinding away for 7 years before anybody watched any of their videos. And then all of a sudden they have 10 million subscribers. Why did you decide to do the school route? Because it seemed like you were on the fence back then.
I was a little on the fence. And I think it had a lot to do with, well, I was looking at going to college in like the height of, the lockdown portion of the pandemic. So I was a little unsure about, if it was going to be worth my while. But B, I didn't know, because we've talked about this at length, but I used to I was on the engineering track throughout high school. So I wanted to go to engineering school for most of my life. And that's what I wanted to do. And then sort of at the last minute, you had a conversation that convinced me that I could do something else. I could do something like this, to work in media, which I hadn't really considered as an option before. So when that sort of came into my mind, I was thinking, well, is it really necessary to even go to school for this sort of thing? Which a lot of people would say no. But now that I am actively going to school for it, I would say, at least in my specific instance, it's well worth it.
I'd forgotten that your timing was really strange in that you had to make a decision. It's where the two alternatives, one is you sit at a desk on things like Discord and just figure it out along the way. And you were faced with basically doing that exact same thing, but paying tens of thousands of dollars to do it and wearing a mask.
Right. I didn't want to pay $80,000 to do something I'm already getting paid to do. That sounded a bit backwards for me. But luckily it worked out that was not the situation. It cleared up quite a bit for me. So
yeah, I did want to mention one more thing too, that when we got all glitchy on the intro, you are responsible for the production of Real Weird Sickos, and all three people in the past who were involved in that show have been integral members of this community. So it's been really cool to see that take off. I forget what episode they're on now, but the traction is happening. And it's such a classic. How many was it, Ben?
40, I believe.
40. That's a lot. That's a lot. So like 92% of podcasts don't make it through 10 episodes. I forget the exact number now. I bet it's even higher. Yeah, I think it's probably a lot higher than 92%. And the ones that do one episode or two and then never again don't even get counted. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was closer to 99. So anyway, getting to 40 episodes is remarkable, and the traction is happening. It's really the kind of thing that we've been saying for so many episodes of this show, where it's like, do a thing, try to do it well, make some adjustments along the way, keep grinding at it, and then it's going to start to build. That's what happened there. And I know that they feel that you, Ben, were and continue to be an integral part of that show's success.
You were talking in the past tense there for a second. I thought I was going to get fired live on air. That would have been interesting.
That's something we haven't done. We haven't dropped a bomb on anybody, have we?
That's
of any kind.
Yeah, we haven't. No bombs have been dropped yet. Bit of an armistice in the TCU department, but there's always a first time for everything. So
yeah. I don't even know what it could be. Because it seems cruel to set somebody up for that kind of thing. We wouldn't do that. I mean, it would have to be something awful. I know that in the back of my mind, there have been a couple people who I've wanted to invite on the show, and then when they've accepted, I just say, like, fuck no, I wasn't serious about that, and then block them.
Sure.
There's a long list of
business.
people that I don't know about that. But yeah, there's a long list of those. But no, we haven't actually dropped a serious bomb on anybody. I took 24 hours to take care of some house stuff and some life stuff. I've got stone to haul and stumps to pull. And I swear a full 25% of the baby gang got a new job or a better job in my absence. Interest rates are rising, inflation is high, but there's a tremendous number of opportunities out there to snag talented creatives. It's truly never been a better marketplace. And the best place to hire is LinkedIn Jobs. It only takes a few minutes to make a free job posting. Then add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your own profile to show that you're looking for talent. Throw a few simple screening questions onto the listing and you'll narrow it down to exactly the right candidates to interview. And then you hire them. It really is that easy. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the most qualified candidates you want to talk to, and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/create. That's linkedin.com/create to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're in Q4. It's time to get this done. It's time to set yourself up to hit the ground running in 2023. I don't know how long this golden age of creative hiring is going to last, so take advantage of it while you can. linkedin.com/create. Okay, so let's get into the actual process on what you do, because when you see, so I purposely have used the title of producer on lots of things myself for my own job because it's meaningless, because it's so nebulous. Nobody knows what you do or what you don't do. It's like if you labeled your business import export and never actually told anybody any details about the products. It's like that. So describe what you do with us.
Yeah, I think I take on a lot of, like you said, producer is a nebulous title, and in a lot of different industries, it means a lot of different things. Like in the film industry, you typically do a lot of packaging for a project and then handle some financials. In television, it's sort of the same, unless it's like a late night scenario where you're essentially putting out fires, which is what I would say I come closer to doing. So, I mean, I do a bit of the packaging with getting people together for an episode or something like that. I do the putting out fires with managing as many people as I can where that's necessary. I also do, as of now, editing, a bit of the blue collar podcast work.
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. The thing together. Yeah. Somebody's got to assemble the IKEA audition. Furniture.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But if I could boil it down to, a very simple description, it would be to just simply make sure that the show has everything it needs to run as smoothly as possible and to do that as reliably as you can.
Why does anybody actually need that? Because so much of it is automated now. Like you said, with the audio editing, it's not like you're splicing together tape on a reel-to-reel at this point. Why does talent need non-talent?
I think, to put it in a real professional way, it's best when the talent can focus on being talent. That's how the more traditional industries work. Every big name actor has a talent agent, a manager, and an attorney to handle everything that they don't want to, so that they can focus on acting in Don't Worry, Darling, which I hear is going super well, by the way, for anybody following.
Very good.
Yeah. But sometimes when you're doing the show yourself, you're making the content, it's a little difficult to juggle those other aspects that you can pretty easily outsource to somebody who knows what they're doing. So I'd say if you've got the ability to reliably do that, it can help elevate your content a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. And if you listed off the people that it's obvious talent needs, and if you said, oh, does somebody really need an accountant to deal with this? Can't they just balance their checkbook themselves? Like, no, it's not that simple. And even if they could, they shouldn't. That time and effort should go elsewhere.
If your car breaks down, why not just read the manual and fix it yourself?
Well, but a lot of people say that, though. Not quite that to that extreme, but I mean, I feel like sometimes we give conflicting advice when we talk about kind of how to get started, because we say really often just do something and figure it out as you go along and get a little better, and just all of that. And now we're saying, why should you pull that manual out and fix your car?
Yeah, I think
both of these things have an appeal, and I just, how do you square that? Because you are doing both of them.
Yeah, I think that comes down to, the simple question you got to ask yourself is, what do you need to do to make what you want as reliably as possible to be able to, just continue to put it out and to be able to make it. And if you can do all of that yourself and to put it out on whatever schedule you set yourself or however often you can, if you can do all that yourself, great, do it yourself. But if there's something getting in the way of, creating what you want to create, then it can be very viable to find somebody to help you out with that,
How important is it to know how to do a thing before you really get into doing the thing? So the example here is, should somebody who wants to start a YouTube channel, how much do they need to know about editing before they try to make videos? Let's say they will ship that off to somebody else. Working with Kevin for so long now, he obviously knows how to make a video, and he's known since well before YouTube was a thing. He did short films and things like that years before YouTube. He understood how to take a visual and an audio project and film it, record it, whatever, in such a way that the outcome would be as you intended, because he understood all the processes between point A and point B. I don't. It's taken me a really long time to understand how the finer points of editing a video work, and then being able to write a piece of a script or do some research, whatever, in a way that's going to fit how the editing is actually going to happen. So how important is it to have a sense of the process before you really commit to the project, or can you truly just figure it out as you go along?
I think it helps at a base level to just, at the very least, know it needs to get done, whether you're doing it or not. So you need to know what steps need to be achieved to put out whatever you're going to put out. Whether you do that along the way or you have somebody else do that depends on A, I suppose, your knowledge, and B, how fast you're willing to put it out, or how much you're willing to work to teach yourself to do it if you're not, well versed in that sort of thing. So you could teach yourself how to, at a base level, I think it's good to be able to put clips together in Premiere or whatever the hell. But you can spend the extra time teaching yourself how to edit if that's something you really want to do, and if it's a useful skill to have. But if you don't want to do that, and you know that it still needs to get done and how it needs to look, and you just don't have the skills to back that up, there's a lot of editors out there willing to do that for you.
Yeah, that's true. The really good editors can make up for your shortfalls in vision and come out with something that is just much better than you could have even envisioned. But the really good editors are not, tend not to be found on Fiverr. So it's a really tough spot for 99% of people who have no money to invest in a thing. They've got a phone or a webcam or just not much in terms of gear. They just want to make some videos and and put something together.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely viable thing to do. I think if that's the position you're in, just don't expect to make a feature length movie that looks like it came right out of the Disney presses, and you probably will be pretty happy with it. I mean, it's about managing the sort of content you can make with the resources you're given, I think.
Yeah, I wish that more people would accept that things aren't going to be very good when they start. And that's
Yeah.
just almost everybody I talk to just is so worried about disappointing themselves. Not so much anything else, but they want to be proud of whatever they're putting out. They want it to be the best it can be. That's viable. I mean, that's totally valid that you want it to be the best you can make it, but it's just not going to be. It's not going to be that great. I don't know when you start creative writing stuff in school, but it's like 4th or 5th grade, isn't that where you actually write stories that are a couple pages long?
Yeah, like at any reasonable length. It's middle school, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there any expectation that these are going to be publishable short stories or the beginning to a great novel? No, that's idiotic. Yeah, there's no reasonable person would think that at all. And they would say, okay, this person has to keep trying and just practice this and do a whole lot of writing. And eventually they're going to get to a point where things are pretty good. Well, everything works that way. Literally everything works that way. Schlatt talking about streaming. How long did he say he spent streaming before he really felt like he was good at it?
I must have been. Yeah, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it wasn't like a week. He wasn't an overnight sensation or anything.
Years. It was years, absolute years. And that's really the process with anybody. Okay, so you're putting on a clinic right now. Okay, this is like your office hours. Somebody comes in. Let's invent a project in the episode chat. Sure. The first person to suggest a project in episode chat is what we'll go with. Oh, this is so dangerous. It's so dangerous.
Horror film. Thank you, Charles.
Okay. Whew, that could have been a lot worse. Yep. Conrad, boy, too late. So, horror film, do you want to make that a podcast or a YouTube channel? I'll let you decide that part.
Let's go with the podcast. That's the wheelhouse I'm in right now.
So it's a podcast about horror films.
Sure.
I walk in, I sit down, I tell you that I'm really into horror films. I want to make a podcast about them. What do I do? The Spooking Hour. The Spooking Hour is the title.
Matt Tabor's Spooking Hour. Imagine if you will. Well, the first thing I tell you is what does one episode look like? Because I think, especially in podcasting, the pitfall that a lot of people fall into is I think they can just kind of do it, which is true to an extent. It's not like there's a lot of, obstacles in your way to start podcasting. But, you hear the joke all the time of like the 3 college dudes who are like, we're so funny, we should start a podcast, but have like absolutely no premise for it and think they can survive on their conversation alone. That is true for a frighteningly small percentage of people. So the first thing I tell you is to plan out an episode and tell me what that looks like. And then plan out the next one and figure out how you're going to do it and at what frequency you can do it. Because if you actually want to make a show, if you're serious about making a show, it obviously has to be something you can repeat.
Yeah, that's fair. And even if you think about those ensemble kind of shows like Knuckle Sandwich or Sleepy Cabin back in the day, just anything that involves that group of really funny people who are funny together. All of those people were doing their own thing and were really good at it first. They didn't start with that because they were a bunch of funny guys who hit the record button. Like, no, they were polished and funny in their own ways, and then it came together. They put that together and figured out how to make a collaborative project with it. But yeah, you're right. There's this blend between planning and being yourself. Reading a script is probably not cool.
Yeah. Reading a full script for a podcast.
Broadcast.
I mean, that works for things like true crime, where you have to be right, all the time if you're delivering that kind of story. But I know a lot of people that have tried to start a podcast just hit the record button and figure out what they're going to talk about from that. They don't even come up with a topic beforehand. So it's not like you have to plan out every word, to a T. Just at least figure out general idea what you're going to talk about and then go from there, because you don't want to have that moment of dead air where you're like, oh, what should we talk about next? Because that's podcast murder.
Okay, so applying it to the horror film podcast called The Spooking Hour, brand new podcast.
That's right.
We would think about things like, okay, are you going to talk about classic films? Are you going to like watch a film each week or two and talk about that? Or are you going to talk about new things coming out? Do you want to interview people who are involved in the horror genre, whether they're actors or writers or other fans? There are a lot of ways to play this, and choosing a specific way or a series of those, all of a sudden that changes everything. You've got something to work with.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at its simplest, it doesn't have to be this super fleshed out thing before you even record episode 1. But at the very least, before you hit record, maybe pick a movie to talk about, like, oh, this episode I'm going to talk about The Shining, and that's the topic. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if you're, Matt Tabor's Spooking Hour, yes. If you're a horror fan, I'm sure you've seen The Shining, and you can talk about that for 45 minutes to an hour or even more, depending on how much you're into it. But the difference is you're not going to be stumbling while that red light is blinking, trying to figure out something to talk about. Because if you don't know what to talk about, people probably aren't going to want to listen. It's sort of as simple as it gets.
Yeah, and we do this on this show. Obviously, we invite people on when we know we have something to talk to them about. Now, there has not been one instance where it's like, oh, we kind of know of the existence of this person. They have a lot of subscribers. Let's get them on. No, it's like Bobby Duke next week is a really good example of how we think about it. We know that he does all sorts of artistic things in a really unique way. That's why we want to talk to him. It's not just, a popular online person. No, there's an angle there, and it makes it a lot easier to figure out who to have on the show, and also what we want to talk to them about when we know what that angle is. And Kevin does, he and I have two completely different approaches on the stuff, and it balances out really nicely, where he's a little more structured with certain points that he wants to hit. And you'll hear him say when we do episodes, like when we're about to go to questions, he'll often just be like, oh, I've got one or two things that I really want to hit because they were on my list. I want to make sure we talk about those before we go to questions, because he's got that structure in, and that works. I have a looser structure, and that usually works. And often because, he balances it out with that structure. So that, that fits to have those two approaches, but you've got to have something. You've got to have something in place so that you can do your project. Like you said, when the light starts blinking or whatever the light does, you've got to have something to do, and it's got to make sense to people. And you really ought to be able to repeat it to a reasonable degree week after week. That's how you actually build a show. We did it. Real Weird Sickos did a good job of coming up with a format that worked, and they refined it episode by episode. This is kind of how it goes. I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description. So, all right, we've got the concept. Then you said to narrow down the approach a little bit. What's next?
Well, once your approach is narrowed down, I think step 2 is to record an episode, see how that goes, and then some sort of post-production, editing, whatever, which honestly can suck to begin with. It's not like especially if you're not one of these, chuckle sandwich kind of people who are coming out of the gate for your podcast with a massive audience. The more important thing is that it exists. I mean, it has to be listenable. You can't record it on 2 tin cans and a string, but
right.
It doesn't have to be this Conan needs a friend, Joe Rogan studio quality of an episode. It can be pretty, passable to start. And, like you were touching on earlier, it's an iterative process. So you get better with each episode as you learn how to edit more, so don't overlook the post-production. And then get the thing out. I mean, that's really the most important part of the whole process is just getting the thing out there, because if you don't do that, the hell's the point to begin with,
Yeah, that's true. You have to just do the thing and then start to do the next episode of the thing. And by doing that,
it sounds like the worst advice to hear, which I know because I remember you, Matt, gave me this advice years ago as I was, in my fledgling stages of working here. I'd be like, oh, what do I do to, get better and put more stuff out and make the best thing I could possibly do? And your advice for me was always just do the thing. And at the time I was like, that is shit. I hate hearing that. That doesn't help me at all.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, it was the most helpful thing somebody could ever tell me. And even as a person who's, until this very moment, not in front of the camera, so to speak, the proverbial camera, it helped every aspect of my behind the scenes work, because at the end of the day, all I need to do is just do it. I say what I'm going to do and I do it, and I do it as reliably as I can. And it's the same thing if you're putting out an episode, you just got to be able to do the damn thing, as, annoying as that can be to hear.
Yeah. And I think you do develop a perspective after you've done a lot of them where you understand that not every single thing you do is going to be a banger. Just think of any show that you like. If you've been around a while and you watch shows like Seinfeld, or I don't know, what do people watch now? Let's say Severance. That's a popular one with our crowd. It's a good show, but not every episode of Seinfeld or Severance or whatever you like is going to be the best ever. Some are going to be better than others. And it doesn't mean that you are definitely going to have stinkers in there. Maybe you do. I'm sure there were episodes of Seinfeld that just were not that funny.
There's got to be shitters.
I can't remember, however many years ago that was. And it's one of those self-selecting things. Like, you're going to forget the ones that were totally forgettable. But that's just the way it is, and that's completely okay. All the things you like operate that way. You listen to an album, and guess what? Some songs on that album are better than others, aside from like 15 albums ever recorded. That's just the way it works. And you only develop that perspective when you've done enough to realize that it happens that way and it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the idea. It's narrowed down. Then you say, do the thing. Now what?
Well, the thing's out.
Is that the end of the process? The thing is out.
The thing is out. So the last step.
We've put out 3 No, I'm updating you here.
Okay,
we've put out
great.
3 episodes now of the Spooking Hour, the horror film podcast. We've done 3 episodes, and it's gone okay. It wasn't as easy as we thought it would be. As soon as we hit record, we froze up a little bit. It's been difficult to be fluid. We've run out of things to say at certain points. We had to do a fair bit of editing and post to cut out some really dumb things and some long, long silences. We're getting used to it. We're getting a little bit better, but this is where we are after 3 episodes. Help.
Well, I think, if you're 3 episodes deep, 5 episodes deep, whatever, and you're starting to hit that ceiling of we need to, up the quality a little bit, that's when you start to optimize things. That's where you either maybe start planning out a little more for your episodes if you feel like you're hitting those dead spots, which should help with the heavy edits in post. Maybe that's where you start to, learn a little more about how to edit, learn your way around Audition a little more. Just any you start, once you're a few episodes in, you can start to clearly see the problems that you are running into more than if you hadn't. When you don't start, you don't know what the problems are. But once you do it, you can identify those pretty easily. So your next step is to try to get rid of those to the best of your ability to make the best show you can. And I think that's something you keep doing ad infinitum. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's good. And the basic process that you've outlined then is conceive of a thing, then refine that, then do the thing, and then refine that. And it's probably a loop of those stages. I think that doesn't really end, not completely. I mean, we're in a pretty good groove, but we're still, after nearly 160 episodes, still figuring out some really basic things. Do we want to do a live show on YouTube? Do we want to do it that way instead of the way we've done it on Discord? And that's a big question. It's not like a fine little detail. Like, no, that's rethinking the format of the show. So it always happens to some degree. And if it doesn't, you're probably on the lazier side, or you've hit on something that you can just ride for a very long time, and that happens too.
Sure.
People do get in a groove and they can ride that groove for a long time with nothing to change. Yeah, that's a really good process. And I think that you have to do that to figure out the inefficiencies. And I think about what we did. The people who've been around since the very beginning here, Ben, you've been around since the beginning. Jeff and the Baby Gang was Baby Gang member number 1. Most of the people in the Discord have been here since the earliest days. And that's a few years now. They know that we did batch recording of episodes at one point. I drove to a different state to record this podcast, and then we would do 3 episodes in one day. I would drive home, and then we would edit them, have them edited. They were video, and release them every 2 weeks or something like that. We did that for 10 episodes, I think, and then started up season 2. We had the TV wall that Kevin made, and that was cool. We started to deal with complexities, though. Things that made it tough, whether it was video editing, whether it was dealing with some tech issues with that TV wall. We've had one episode that was such a technological failure that we truly could not do anything with it. It just wasn't possible. We recorded with iMalex in 2018, whatever the first batch of episodes for the podcast was, whatever year that was. And it just broke. Everything that could possibly ruin a recording happened. And we felt bad. We didn't want to ask him for another hour and a half of his time after we ruined it the first time around. So we wanted to eliminate a lot of the complexities that took a long time to get the show out. That's another thing the veterans around here remember, is that it was a long time before recording and releasing. And Ben, you were the main part of us getting the turnaround really quick, so that we would record on Tuesday. Originally it was Wednesday, but then we would have it out to patrons 2 days later and out to everybody the day after that. Well, it was a little tough to get used to at first, but we got in that groove and we worked it out. So yeah, at a certain point, you start thinking about the inefficiencies and what everybody's good at doing, what they have time to do. I'm going to scroll up here because Conrad said something I wanted to highlight. Oh, yeah. So he said, I want to create content, but I can't dedicate enough time. Too busy with bigger priorities. I like my job life. Yeah, that's totally fair. And I'm glad that Conrad admits that he's got other stuff going on. And that, he's making a choice and he doesn't feel bad about that. It's just a scheduling thing. You can figure that out as you do this stuff. I think about talking to Angry Video Game Nerd. He's really had to draw some lines over the years that separate work and his life. He gets married. He has a kid. Johnny Millennium.
The nerve, by the way.
The nerve. I know. It's disgusting.
Honestly.
It's disgusting when these people sacrifice their content.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
To make a life for themselves.
It's embarrassing.
It's almost like they think they deserve a life for themselves when they're actually in service to us.
Yeah, I have content to watch. What the hell are you doing? It's a spit in the face.
But you figure that stuff out, and it changes over time. Kevin's talked about it changing for him. He's made a lot of videos over the years. I mean, it's shocking how much content he has made since YouTube really started, well before Vsauce. It's nutty to think of how much content he made before Vsauce even existed. And then obviously has committed the last 11 years to just this one channel. And then 4 years ago, starting a podcast that has recorded like 300 plus hours of content. So, you feel a little differently about it 10 years in, 1,000 hours of content in. It's okay to not be quite as excited to wake up and film some days as you used to. But all that stuff changes, and you reevaluate that, and you get some help. Isaac in the Discord it dealt with a bunch of things with YouTube Shorts and TikToks, because like both Kevin and I can't grind on that stuff anymore. We don't have the time to do it. We have other stuff that we have to do. And I mean, we technically could, but we would be working from morning till night, and that blows. We're already like in a race to the grave, and that would just
who's winning?
Put a booster. I don't know. 6 months ago, I would have said it's not even close. I'm ahead by a mile.
Lately, it seems neck and neck. I won't lie.
That is, and it's not because things have gotten bad for Kevin. It's because they've gotten better for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want
Redemption
people to think
arc.
that like yeah. It's not
You've
Kevin
been
catching
slowly
up with my
poisoning Kevin.
Shititude, weighing him down. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good plan. Once you're in that cycle, where do you go? Because again, we talk about a podcast like Real Weird Sickos that's in stage 2, really. They've completed stage 1. We're in stage who knows what, 'cause that's been several years. But they're entering stage 2. Let's say the Spooking Hour. We've now recorded our 40th episode. We're pretty good at what we do. We've developed a little bit of a fan base. We get better views than we used to get. Everything's pretty smooth. Our editor is on time and efficient. What now?
Well, from there, I think it's time to get a little more serious about it if that's what you want to do. I mean, I guess it depends on your goals. If you want to just have a fun little podcast that you put out every week, maybe that's your limit there. You just keep doing that because you can do it reliably on top of whatever else your life entails. But if that's something you want to continue to pursue and maybe make a little cheddar off of it, I think you got to at least spread the word in any way that you can, because you might have a little fan base, but got to get more people, take to Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's right. At a certain point, you have to decide where you're headed with the thing, what you want to do. Do you actually want to, do you want to try to make a buck? Which, I mean, it would be amazing if we did on this show. We haven't.
Wouldn't it be nice?
It would. But we've also consciously decided that the most important thing for us is efficiency, ease, building a good team of people. We're at a point now where we're looking to create a very real network of shows. That was our goal, as opposed to let's blow one thing up, try to get maximum money out of it. We didn't have to think about things like turning it into a full-time job, because we already had ones that we liked. And they were very similar anyway. So it's not like we were chimney sweeps and coal miners, and we desperately wanted to
just
do,
not recently,
the online desk life. No, not recently. But most people do have a point where they have to make a decision about whether they want to really give it a go, whether that's making it a more real part of their life in terms of job or hobbies or whatever, or trying to monetize in some way. That's fair. So I really like that. I really like that 5-step process that you outlined.
It's in my new book.
Not trying to
everywhere now.
I say I'm codifying this like a weenie, but I'm trying to distill it, right? And that to me distills down to come up with a thing in a specific angle, refine that, do the thing, refine that, and then really figure out where you want to go with it. Or maybe you're done. I don't know. You want to do something different. And that's also totally legitimate, where people do a project, they realize they want to do a different project. It is completely okay. There's so many people who we've talked to who started a YouTube channel about one thing and it turned into something completely different. If anybody follows the commentary type people, Bo Blacks is a guy who blew up on the back of the concept Twitter Versus, where he would sort of catalog Twitter fights and controversies and things like that by exhaustively making a record of the tweets and then presenting that so you didn't have to. That blew up. Well, that's not how his channel started at all. I forget exactly what he did 8 years ago, but it wasn't that. I think it was gaming stuff. A lot of people go from gaming into something completely and totally different. So yeah, maybe that's a thing that comes up at that fifth stage where it's, yeah, I want to make a buck, or no, actually I want to take what I've learned from this and do a different sort of project. I know that if Kevin could cash in his chips right now and do literally anything and have the same, feel just as good about his life, all of that, ideally he wakes up and dedicates every minute of the day to like UFC. That would be more fun for him. And I would not be surprised if down the line he involves himself in some kind of MMA, UFC type content project because, well, do the stuff you want to do.
He'll have a JRPG corner pretty soon.
That's right. We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys. Okay, so where did that path come from?
Where did it come
from?
Did
it come from what you've seen with the Create Unknown? Did it come from actual studies and courses?
As of now, I'm only in my second year of school. So if that's something they do teach here, I haven't hit it yet. But most of it just comes down straight to experience. Mostly through the Create Unknown. Like you said, you were figuring out the process and I was right there next to you figuring it out with you. It's not like I came in with this encyclopedia-like knowledge that I could bestow upon all of you at the ripe age of like 14.
7.
Yeah, I was 3 years old when they scooped me up from the orphanage. It is something you learn over time as you sort of build a show. At least in the niche show related aspects of it, but there is a lot of it that doesn't have to do with the show. A lot of it just has to do with how you lead your life, how you work in any capacity. Because especially now, I can't tell if the show is influencing my life or my life is influencing the show at this point. But I tend to run a lot of my day-to-day operations the same way I do the podcast, which is to just get it done as best as I can and as reliably as I can. And if I can't do that, I adjust and I, iron out the kinks. So I guess it's tough for me to pinpoint exactly, but a lot of it, just came from doing it.
How important is scheduling? Because you talked about knowing some people who have done podcasts, and I've known a few as well, and it really is a few. It's really odd how few podcast people I know, given what we do and how long we've done it. But there is a lot of inconsistency. Like you said, people hitting the button and just talking about whatever and thinking it's going to work. Well, they also do that with scheduling too, where we needed to have this show on the same night each week, whether it was Wednesday or Tuesday now, the same night and the same time. Occasionally we deviate if a guest needs it, and that's totally okay. You always have weird exceptions to things, but generally I'd say 9 shows out of every 10 are Tuesday at 6. We needed that to happen, and that helps everything along.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if
is that us being, well, my question is that us being boomers and needing it because we have, we're 90 years old and we have a bunch of other things and obligations that we have to do, or is that important to the process?
You got to watch MASH at 9, so we got to be over by 8.
Right.
No, I mean, if it is a boomer thing, I think it's something that everybody should take to heart, because if I had to sort of point to the most important aspect of doing my job and doing really everything else in my life at the same time, it's predictability. If something's up in the air, I'm upset. I'm not doing well. I need to know when something's going to happen, when it's going to get done, and when I can put it out in the sense of a show. And I think that's something that, I don't know if it's overlooked, but people don't put as much stock in it. And I think that's one of the main podcast killers. And the same for a lot of other projects. Is just, it can feel overwhelming if you don't know what's happening at every stage of the process. And something that really helps that is just making it more predictable.
How do you do that? How do you schedule things for ease of getting it done and also the reliability of getting it done? How do you have that regimented structure and still have the energy of spontaneity? Because that every single time somebody has defended why they're all over the place with recording and releasing and all that, they say, I do a thing when I'm really feeling it, and it's not going to be as good if I don't do it that way. Can you have it both ways, and how do you have it both ways?
I think if you are one of those people that is very spontaneous about it, and you sort of don't feel that same creative spark when you do it more regimented, I think it just becomes a habit thing. It might be a bit tough at first, but I do think long run, it will be easier for you. And, maybe you might find that you like it a little more if you just get used to that habit, because at least in my experience, it improves all other aspects of my life. And if I'm working on a creative project, unless I'm writing Nirvana songs in the 90s, I want the other aspects of my life to be going pretty well so I can, give it my best energy. So I don't think it's a short-term fix if you're the opposite, but I do think it's a worthwhile one to invest in.
Yeah, I also want to grab onto something you said about the other completely unrelated things in your life affecting the ability to do this. I forget exactly what you said regarding that, but I made a mental note on it. Do you remember what that was? Because I wanted you to say more.
The unpredictability of my life?
Well, that too. You had crazy uncertainty years ago.
It was awful. I hated it. When I was growing up, get your notepads out. This is Ben W. lore.
Time to dox.
Yeah, time to dox. My parents separated at a very young age for me, but in a way that it was like a joint custody scenario. So from my entire life, really, up to now that I'm living on my own, I would move between houses at like sporadic days throughout the week, it would seem.
It was several times a week, though, wasn't it?
It's like 3 to 4 times a week. Yeah.
It wasn't like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
No.
It was like
it was within a 7-day period.
Then 1 day, then 3 days. Yeah.
So that didn't really matter until I had a job that required me to do things on a weekly predictable cycle, when the rest of my life is sort of up in the air between, moving between my houses and just the general annoyances of being, in primary school and things like that. When you don't have the full grasp on your life, if somebody else is sort of still controlling that for you, it can be tough to be predictable. So I did, my best to manage that as well as I could. And I think I did an okay job. I'm sitting here right now, so I didn't get fired. So
No,
it could have been
there were a
worse.
couple times where it was definitely hard to meet the obligations, and that was from the craziness on your end, but also like we took responsibility for having a process that allowed your uncertainty to seep in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we thought, okay, we need to adjust the process a little bit to make it bulletproof. So that was useful to us, and we eventually worked that out pretty well on both ends.
Yeah, and I think that's a key component of making it as predictable as you can for yourself. It doesn't just mean being like, all right, at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, I'm going to make my Jelking fan cast. No, like it's factoring in the other aspects of your life, no matter how normal or crazy they might be, to be able to do something on a schedule that you can repeat. And that might not mean weekly for you. At first, it might mean monthly until you can get the rest of your life in order. But whatever the frequency is, just be able to repeat it and be able to predict it, I think. And for me, even with all those aspects up in the air, I was still able to do it because we built the show and specifically my position in a way that it could be done. And I think that's, an important thing to note.
Yeah, there's something that I wish I'd put in the intro, said in the intro rather, that I want everybody to know. Before the Discord happened, we talked to Ben about, do you want to help out with some things, whatever, because we didn't even know what we needed at that point. At that time, we were still in a partnership with a guy named Dave to make the show. He handled all the editing, all of that stuff. So we basically didn't need what Ben does now. We were thinking purely on stuff like Discord and some promotion, things like that. So and even that, we didn't know exactly what we needed. So we generally threw this thing out to Ben, this feeler. What do you want to do? Well, at the time, I think this program has been shelved. At the time, Google allowed you to take certification courses in YouTube, AdSense, analytics, and you would have an actual certification from Google for those things. And it was free to do, but very few people did it. Worldwide, there were like 14,000 people. That's it. Nobody bothered to be actually certified in these things. I'd done it years before. And so we asked Ben if he had an interest in doing those courses. And he said yes. And 2 days later, he had completed all of them and then asked us what was next. And this strategy is, it is one of the most valuable things that anybody can do. I know that Kevin has selected a topic for he and I to talk about a few weeks from now. And he alluded to it last week. I don't want to spoil it much, but it's really about how to approach work, which is a lot more exciting than it sounds. But this is a big deal, to do a thing, then finish the thing and ask for more. It seems really simple, but nobody does this. And when you're on the other side of it, the position that Kevin and I were in this whole equation, it was the best. Like, what more can you ask for than somebody who says they'll do a thing, then they do a thing, and then they ask what the next thing is? That's a lottery win. That's amazing. And when that happened, that set the hook for us to do stuff with Ben. We knew the position he was in with still being in school, with having crazy logistics in his life. And sorry, I got a text from my mom. She got the 2.5 pounds of walnuts.
Oh, good.
That I ordered.
I was worried.
The bulk walnuts, yes. But yeah, that when we saw that happen, that's all it took for us basically to commit to him and make sure that Ben was part of our plan here. Isaac is the same way. Isaac, everybody knows Isaac in the Discord. He's also the type of person who says he'll do a thing, does that thing, and then asks for more. If you do that, you are set for life. It really, honestly is that simple. The more we record and talk about things, the more I'm completely convinced that we could write everything you need on the back of a Post-it note, and it anybody reading it would be good. But I did want just to publicly throw that out there, that's something that you did quite well, and it really kicked off all of the stuff here.
Yeah, and like you mentioned about writing that on the back of a Post-it note, there are always some, Create Unknown episodes that afterwards I'm like, damn, that was a really good episode. I really like that. And then when I boil it down in my mind, it's always just a person who does that. It's never really anything that's much different. They're always like, yeah, I say I'm going to make a video and then I do it and then I release it. And I'm like, oh, and I eat it up every time. And it's because it just works. It's really not a rocket science. And I know I mentioned earlier about giving the seemingly shitty advice of just do a thing, but this is why it's important. And why I keep bringing up the word reliability. Like, if you can say you can do a thing and then you do it, there's just a surprisingly few amount of people that, hold themselves to that, seemingly simple standard. And it's just something that you should, I think, apply to your work and most things that you do,
Yeah, and people will want to work with you because they would much rather work with somebody who's going to get the thing done than even somebody who's better at it who may not. And I felt this way when I was editing news. So I don't know if I've even gone into this in the past, but I spent years editing news stories, assigning them, editing them, all that stuff. Well, the best people I worked with were the ones who submitted shit on time.
Yeah.
And that is it. It could be terrible. Well, guess what? My job is being an editor, and I'm very, very good at that job.
Yeah.
I can edit bad writing. I can't edit writing that doesn't come in at all.
Right.
I didn't care if somebody did a really shitty job. I obviously liked it when they did a better job. But first and foremost, if they submitted like clockwork, I mean, what?
Yeah. I mean, it really is that simple.
What else can you do?
And if because we work with the team here, and sometimes I, have to manage things that you or Kevin can't. And if I ask somebody on the team to do something and they say they're going to do it, the only time I want to hear from them after that is when they've done it. And I think we've done a pretty good job, especially with people like Isaac, of cultivating a culture of having that, and being able to expect that is really nice, because if I get a message from Isaac, it's very rare that I'm like, oh shit, something went wrong. It's like, oh, he did exactly what I asked him to do. And that's exactly what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that allows too for things to go wrong. It allows for crazy shit to come up. I've had periods where I've had bizarre life derailing and work derailing things. Kevin went through a period where he just got hit by just terrible luck in life through no fault of his own. He had a bunch of shit to deal with. Well, you can absorb those things when you've got that reliability all the other times. If it's shaky and rocky and then you have to absorb a blow, it's going to crumble. But if you're pretty good at being reliable, then, well, you can deal with the things that are out of your control, and then, you move on from that. So I know that you have a hard out. So you get two questions at the end. The first one is what is the future 5 years from now? 5 years from now, what is Producer Ben doing?
Hopefully,
what's your life?
Producing for a career. In 5 years, I don't know how possible that is. I don't know where I'll be. Maybe I'll still be here, much to the chagrin of everybody in the episode chat right now. But if all goes well in the Create Unknown, maybe this is where I'll be. I'm at a stage where I can be very open to options right now, and I'm very fortunate for that. And I'm excited to see where that takes me. So I don't have a definitive answer, which is lame, but
yeah, I think that's good. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I guess it would be cool if you had some giant, amazing goal. I've never had one of those. I have never set a real goal for anything ever. I mean, I have a hard time being interested in things that way. But at the same time, it's great to be completely and totally flexible.
Yeah.
I think that's, there are calls for your firing.
Yeah.
Bring back Dan Yosua. Dan, by the way, Dan Yosua. So, I mentioned Ben and Isaac, but like everybody we've worked with has the same quality. Dan was extremely reliable. He's awesome. That's why he is succeeding on his own stuff. Yeah, he's great. Even like things in the Discord, Conrad's on top of shit. Conrad handles things. If there's a question, he figures out the answer and then, throws it to us like, what do you want to do about this? And we don't have to poke or prod him with anything. He just handles it and throws it back to us. So yeah, there's a reason why all of these people have the same quality, and it's because we deliberately look for that and also get along with that. We respect it and we understand it, and so we like those kinds of people. But it's also by a mile the most efficient and easiest in terms of operations. Well, in terms of being interesting, this is a question that we've committed to for some time now, and I think it's really important that we ask everybody this, because everybody we talk to is interesting in their own way, and they are surrounded by interesting people. They've done something to get in a position to be on this show. We've found them interesting in some way. And so if they have any advice or suggestions to develop others into interesting status, we want to hear it. So, Ben, what makes an interesting person?
A great question. One I've heard a few times at this point, and I've heard like three different people.
Yeah, you didn't see this coming, did you?
Out of left field. I've heard like three different people be like, if they've gone through hardships and they're still nice, which is a great answer, but we've heard it enough. So I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. What I'm saying is your hardship means nothing and I'm better. I'm kidding. I think to me, an interesting person, at least in my experience, anybody I run into who seems genuinely interesting to me is somebody who has a drive to better themselves in some aspect. It could be career, it could be personal health, it could be, in their relationships or something. But if I meet somebody who just clearly does not have a drive to improve in any way, in any aspect of their life, I don't care. I'm not really interested in seeing more of that person. So to me, when I run into somebody who's like, I have X, Y, Z as my career goals for 10 years from now, which I know I just gave a, lukewarm answer on, but still, the thought is there. That's interesting to me. If I see somebody who's like, yeah, I want to lose 10, 15 pounds by the end of the year, that's interesting to me. I think a strive, because if you're not working to be the best version of yourself that you can be, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I think it doesn't matter at all what that pursuit is. I think you're right about that. It could be, I want to get in physical shape. It could be, I want to make sure I'm asleep by 10 p.m. every night.
Yeah.
I would actually be extremely interested in the day by day of somebody who said that, because so many things can go wrong and keep you from doing it. If like, it would be a cool thing to follow, even though it's really not a cool thing. But yeah, that's a really good point, that it does not matter what somebody's into. They got to be into something. They've got to be committed to something and taking it seriously. That's awesome. Okay, well, that's the end with Producer Ben. Ben, you're fired.
Great.
It's over.
Been a good run.
This is the first bomb we've dropped on the show. No, we're really happy with things, with how things are going. And like I said, we're in a position now where we'd like to see Unknown Media become a very real network, and we're working to make that happen. We have Bobby Duke next week. I have to pull up the episode schedule here to see. Right, Bobby Duke is next week. Then, and Kevin will be back next week. After that, this is the one that Kevin wants to do with the concept of quiet quitting. I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter. I know the New York Times had a long article about it. This concept that you don't quit your job, but you kind of do the bare minimum, and you don't tell anybody. You just do you meet your minimum obligations. And they used to call this, in education, teachers would say they would work to the contract. So they would refuse to do anything that was not explicitly outlined in their contract. That meant they wouldn't write college recommendations for people. They wouldn't stay beyond 3:15 or whatever the contract stipulated. And that was a tactic used before going to a strike. It was a labor action tactic when teachers would begin to work to the contract. Anyway, it's coming back in a new way, and people are loving it. They're really celebrating it. We have a different take on this, and Kevin especially does, where he thinks the solution is quiet grinding. And I really look forward to him explaining what all those details are. So Bobby Duke next week, then quiet grinding versus quiet quitting, and then Nile Red. That's going to be fun. We first met him in 2017, I think it was, at EduCon, and we bumped into him at VidCon this year, and then Kevin saw him another time a couple weeks ago. So, eventually we actually have to make this episode work. We wanted to talk to him for years. He is fascinating. He's just fun. Like, he's fun to talk to. So Bobby Duke, quiet grinding, Nile Red, and Kevin returns next week. Thank you to everybody who came out on the live show. Thank you to Producer Ben in advance for editing this episode. And that's it. See you, Space Cowboys. Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Chelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.